Did you know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gail Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This discussion begins my talks on Billy Bonney's own communications. They're from my book, Billy the Kid's Writings, Words and Wit. Featured here is Billy's personally modified Spencerian handwriting. Because of the popularized outlaw myths of Billy the Kid, it surprises people that he was highly literate. In fact, one of his mid-20th century's imposters, named Brushy Bill Roberts, even claimed to match Billy by being illiterate himself. So telling you about Billy's handwriting helps to understand the real Billy the Kid. Billy benefited from mid-19th century America's goals of universal literacy and standardized penmanship. In the century before, people wrote with a trimmed quill feather. By the early 19th century, that design was translated into a long wood or bone holder with a pointed tip called a nib. The nib was a hollow steel half-cylinder with a split tip. Eventually, the nib's ink flow was improved by a hole above the slit and side slits. One needed skill to use this pen. It required frequent dipping in ink, and ink splattering was a risk. In Billy's day, ink was made from gallatonic acid. It resulted from the gall wasps laying her eggs on oak trees. The trees encapsulated the growing larvae in swellings filled with gallic and tannic acid called oak galls. Those colorless acids were harvested from the galls. Color came from adding sulfate of iron and dyes like indigo. That made iron gall ink. That's what Billy used. Over time, iron gall ink oxidized to a rusty brown, and its acid could eat through paper. So luck of good preservation kept for posterity Billy's written words. As to paper, in Billy's day, America led pulp paper production, though its availability in remote New Mexico territory was often limited. The pulp came from rags, ground wood, or a mixture of both. It was spread by hand, pressed, bleached, dried, and cut. As will be seen in a later talk about my authenticating a new Billy the Kid letter, this process resulted in each paper batch having unique pulp and fiber patterns like fingerprints. The man who created standardized penmanship in the 19th century was a calligrapher named Platt Rogers Spencer. He made a business empire from his instructional texts and copybooks with his legible, standardized, cursive writing style called after himself Spencerian. After Spencer's 1864 death, his sons continued the manuals as the Spencerian authors. Billy Bonney's education before he arrived in New Mexico territory is unknown, but from the age of 13 and a half to 14 and a half, he was in Silver City's public school and would have been taught the Spencerian writing method. The fact that all Billy Bonney's known writings are in Spencerian cursive style is a boon to authenticating his writings. As will be seen, he uniquely modified the Spencerian alphabet for a bolder look in his own communications. Learning Spencerian style was demanding on students. It involved the whole body, as illustrated in the teaching manuals. On screen are the proper positions for Spencerian writing. Before putting pen to paper, required was assuming a proper position at a desk. That position is illustrated in Spencer's son's 1874 book titled Theory of Spencerian Penmanship. One sat at the desk with straight posture, stable foot positioning, writing hands forearm flat on the desk surface, and pen properly held. The intent was to make the entire arm a sliding unit. That gliding was used to form the Spencerian alphabet. Important to note is that a desk was therefore necessary. That will later have implications for analyzing Billy's handwriting when he was on the run or in jail and lacking proper writing facilities. On screen is the proper holding of the pen for Spencerian handwriting. As Spencer taught, the objective was to control the gliding penmanship. Here are Platt Rogers Spencer's 1857 obsessive details. Take the pen between the first and second fingers and the thumb, observing first that it crosses the second finger on the corner of the nail. Second, that it crosses the forefinger forward of the knuckle. Third, that the end of the thumb touches the holder opposite the lower joint of the forefinger. Fourth, that the top of the holder points toward the right shoulder. Fifth, that the wrist is above the paper and the hand resting lightly on the nails of the third and fourth fingers. Sixth, that the point of the pen comes squarely to the paper. This much complexity needed practice. Spencer's manuals had drills for pen holding and alphabet formation. He divided the alphabet's shapes into what he called elements. They were ovals, curves, and lines, and they all slanted rightward at exactly 52 degrees. Here are some Spencerian practice exercises from 1874. On screen are Spencerian writing exercises. Rote was essential to Spencer's system. The exercises were done on chalkboard or paper to practice underlying principles of the alphabet's design and slant until they became automatic. That all this rigmarole was necessary to achieve the Spencerian look is proved by Billy's handwriting changing in the Santa Fe jail, where he could not assume the correct position. And he was distressed enough about his poor writing to explain its reason to one of his attorneys named Edgar Capeless in an April 15, 1881 letter from the Mesilla jail. Billy stated, "Excuse bad writing, I have my handcuffs on." To put Billy's inculcated Spencerian perfectionism in perspective, realized that he had a bigger problem on April 15, 1881. He had just been sentenced to hanging. Here is a comparison of Billy's Spencerian handwriting with and without proper writing facilities. On screen is the comparison of Billy's letter of March 13, 1879 to Lew Wallace and his January 1st, 1881 letter to Wallace from the Santa Fe jail. As can be seen, Billy's letter of March 13th had proper Spencerian slant, as opposed to his January 1st one from the Santa Fe jail. There he wore handcuffs and had no proper writing desk, so lost the slant. Nevertheless, as will be seen, examination of his individual alphabetical letters, as well as his typical spelling and punctuation errors, show all the letters to be by him. Spencerian lowercase letters look much like today's cursive lettering, but the uppercase letters don't. They had ornate loops and flourishes. Since Billy personalized his Spencerian script, here is a comparison of standard Spencerian capital letters with Billy's modifications of them. On screen is the comparison of Spencerian capital letters with Billy's modifications to their right. Billy rejected the fussy calligraphic excesses of the Spencerian method's capital letters, as can be seen by comparing Spencerian capital letters and Billy's bolder versions. As to the Spencerian style simpler lowercase letters, Billy used them outright and maintained their rightward slant. Spencerian penmanship also used calligraphic shading of alphabet letters by increasing nib pressure to let out more ink. Billy tried shading just once on his bill of sale for a horse to a Henry Hoyt. He failed. He almost blotted the capital BB of the horse's brand that he was illustrating. Billy did use Spencerian embellishments in his signatures. They evidenced his practice, experimentation, and artistic goals. Here are his signatures. On screen is Billy's signature on the Hoyt bill of sale. It is the most famous of Billy's signatures. It is from his October 24th, 1878 bill of sale to Henry Hoyt. For it, Billy cleverly joined his middle initial H for Henry with the B of Bonney. It is not a natural fit. Trying to do it yourself shows the cleverness of his design. On screen is another of Billy's attempts at a fancy signature. It is on his March 20th, 1879 letter to Justice of the Peace John Squire Wilson. In it, he joined the W for William, the H for Henry, and the B for Bonney, but he lost the rightward slant. On screen are some of jailed Billy's signatures. They're more awkward because of his handcuffs and poor writing facilities. Examples here are his letters to Governor Lew Wallace of January 1st, 1881, and March 27th, 1881, from the Santa Fe jail. Though his personal Spencerian alphabet is maintained, he loses the correct Spencerian slant. So Billy mastered Spencerian penmanship, and his sophisticated vocabulary proved his high intelligence, but his writings betray his limited formal education. He had a few repeating grammatical errors and misspellings. Ultimately, they helped to authenticate his writings. Billy apparently didn't know that all letters are dated, but he was a quick learner. His first pardon bargain letter to Governor Lew Wallace is undated, though it is thought to be from March 13, 1879. 2 days later, he saw the March 15, 1879 date on Lew Wallace's answer to him. So he added the March 20th, 1879 date to his response to Wallace, and he dated all his letters after that. Billy also never learned that sentences start with a capitalization, so all his letters have that telltale error, except when the word was automatically capitalized, like someone's name. Along with that error is his rather frequent omission of periods at sentences' ends, and he never used a question mark. Billy also added emphasis by capitalizing words he wanted to stress. Billy also made a few consistent spelling errors, though his overall spelling was excellent. He even correctly spelled indictments in his March 13, 1879 letter to Lew Wallace. He seems to have misspelled when sounding out words. So for Billy Campbell, one of John Tunstall's murderers, he spelled his last name Camul in his December 12, 1880 letter to Wallace. He also used Enimies for enemies in his March 20, 1879 letter to Wallace, and he spelled murdered as Murderded in his March 13, 1879 letter to Wallace. But since Billy was so smart, he remembered his wrong spellings and reused them, so they helped to confirm his authorship of letters. So, ANNSER for answer is 3 times in his March 13, 1879 letter to Wallace, and is also in his jail letters to Wallace 2 years later on March 4, 1881 and March 27, 1881. As we will see in another talk, Billy's personalized Spencerian handwriting, along with his few consistent grammatical and spelling errors, helped me to authenticate a new Billy the Kid letter. In upcoming talks, we'll see what Billy actually wrote about.